The Titan ascension is underway as the giants of innovation rise to reclaim their place at the top of the world. Witness the epic scale of our latest series, where power and legacy collide in stunning 3D. Subscribe today and be there for the ultimate rise to greatness. The Fontaine Chicago smelled like old money and fresh flowers. That's the first thing you noticed when you walked through the service entrance on your first day. Not the marble lobby, not the crystal chandeliers, not the kind of floral arrangements that cost more than a semester of community college. You noticed the smell from the back, cleaning solution, linen starch, and underneath all of it, something expensive that you couldn't name yet. I was 26 years old, holding a mop, and absolutely certain I was temporary. I wasn't supposed to stay. I had a plan. Everyone who works a hotel housekeeping job at 26 has a plan. Mine involved finishing my business degree at night, saving enough to get out of my sister's couch situation, and eventually landing somewhere that didn't require me to wear orthopedic shoes before 30. The Fontaine was just the bridge. Good tips from the event staff when they needed extra hands. Flexible enough that I could keep my Tuesday and Thursday night classes. What I didn't plan for was learning everything. Not because anyone taught me. Because when you're invisible, people talk in front of you like you're furniture. And I listened. I listened to the catering manager argue with the events coordinator about linen costs. I listened to the general manager's assistant complain about the quarterly forecast while I restocked a supply closet 2 feet from where she was standing. I learned how a union contract works because I overheard a grievance meeting through a banquet hall door. I learned what food and beverage margins look like because the regional director left a spreadsheet open on a table I was setting, and I have a very good memory. For 3 years, I was furniture. Very educated furniture. The owner's son arrived on a Tuesday in March. I remember because Tuesdays were when I did the executive floor, and I had the cart loaded with extra towels when the elevator opened and he stepped out with 2 rolling suitcases, and the particular energy of someone who has never once worried about being late. He was maybe 32. Blazer that fit well. The kind of haircut that has a waiting list. He looked at me, looked at my cart, and said, "Can you move that? I need to get by." The hallway was wide enough for 4 people to walk side by side. I moved the cart. He didn't say thank you. He was already on his phone. I found out later his name was Ashton. His father, who had owned the Fontaine for 20 years, had just handed him the VP of Operations title as a 45th birthday gift to himself, the gift being, apparently, no longer having to manage his own hotel. Ashton had a background in commercial real estate. He had never worked a single day in hospitality. By April, he had already reorganized the housekeeping schedule in a way that meant every room on floors 10 through 15 got turned over in 40 minutes instead of 55. If you've never tried to de-clean a hotel room in 40 minutes, let me tell you, you don't clean it. You redistribute the chaos. By May, he had replaced the catering manager, a woman named Elaine who had been running events at the Fontaine for 11 years. With someone he described in an all-staff email as bringing fresh energy to our hospitality vision. Fresh energy turned out to mean she had interned at a wedding venue in Scottsdale and knew how to make a seating chart look pretty in Canva. By June, I had started quietly keeping notes, not to do anything with them. At first, it was just the habit of someone who felt like she was watching a slow-motion accident and couldn't look away. Dates, decisions, outcomes. The client complained about the Henderson Okafor rehearsal dinner, where 2 tables didn't get their appetizers because the new catering lead hadn't built in a buffer for dietary restrictions. The florist contract that got canceled in favor of someone Ashton knew from his real estate days, who charged 40% more for arrangements that looked, in my professional furniture opinion, significantly worse. I wrote it all down. I also kept going to class on Tuesday and Thursday nights. I graduated in December. Business administration, concentration in hospitality management. I walked across the stage in a community center gym at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, took a photo with my diploma in the parking lot with my sister and her husband, and went back to work the next morning. Nobody at the Fontaine knew. It hadn't seemed relevant. What happened with Ashton started at the Whitmore Gala. The Whitmore Foundation is one of Chicago's larger philanthropic organizations. They do an annual fundraising gala that rotates between a few different venues, and that year it was ours. It was the biggest event on the Fontaine's calendar. 300 guests, a seated dinner, a live auction, a keynote speaker, the kind of event that could generate referrals for 2 years if it went well, and the kind of event that would end up in industry publications if it went badly. I was assigned to the event floor that night as extra staff, setting up, monitoring, breaking down. I'd done it 100 times. Ashton had decided, over the explicit objections of what remained of our experienced events team, to handle the AV setup in-house rather than using the vendor we'd used for 6 years. He had found someone cheaper. The cheaper someone had never done a ballroom this size. I knew something was wrong by 5 p.m. The projection screens weren't calibrated. The lapel mic feedback loop hadn't been resolved. The lighting on the stage was washing out the centerpieces that the florist, the one from Ashton's real estate network, had placed too close to the riser. I flagged it to the events lead. She told me it was handled. At 6:45, 15 minutes before guests arrived, Ashton walked through the room doing what I can only describe as a general inspecting troops energy. He stopped near where I was adjusting a table setting and looked at me like he was trying to remember if I came with the building. "You," he pointed. "The centerpieces on the far tables look uneven. Fix it." I looked at the centerpieces. They were fine. The ones near the stage were the problem. "The stage arrangements are sitting in a hot spot from the lighting," I said. "They're going to wilt before dinner's over. If you move them back about 18 inches, I didn't ask for your input." He said it pleasantly. The way people say things when they want you to understand the conversation is already over. "I asked you to fix the centerpieces." I fixed the centerpieces. The projection system crashed 40 minutes into the keynote. The stage flowers, under the lights, looked like something from a time-lapse of decay by the time the salads came out. One of the board members of the Whitmore Foundation, a woman in her 60s in a green dress who I later found out had been attending this gala for 18 years, stopped me near the service corridor and said, quietly and without malice, "What happened to this place?" I didn't have an answer for her. What I had was a notebook and a degree, and 3 years of watching. I left the Fontaine 2 months later. I didn't make a scene. I didn't leave a note. I'd put in my 2 weeks, worked them professionally, and walked out on a Friday afternoon in February with a box that held a spare pair of shoes, a coffee mug, and 4 notebooks worth of observations about how a 20-year-old institution gets hollowed out from the inside by someone who thinks operational experience is optional. I moved into a studio in Logan Square. I got a job as an assistant events coordinator at a mid-sized company that ran corporate conferences. It wasn't glamorous, but I was finally on the right side of the clipboard. And then I started making calls. Here's what I had learned. From 3 years of being furniture, the hospitality business runs on relationships. The vendors, the venues, the clients, the insurance brokers, the linen suppliers. Everyone knows everyone. And everyone talks. The Whitmore Gala disaster had not gone unnoticed. There were conversations happening at industry lunches and in hotel lobby bars that I was now slowly becoming part of. I also had something else. During my last year at the Fontaine, I had become friendly with a woman named Opal who handled accounts payable. Not close friends, just the kind of workplace friendship built on shared break room microwave times and the occasional eye contact during a particularly absurd all-hands meeting. When I left, Opal and I stayed in touch. Lightly. Occasional texts. In August, 6 months after I'd left, she texted me a photo. It was a notice. The Fontaine Chicago had defaulted on 2 vendor contracts and was in negotiations with the management company that held their operational agreement. Occupancy was down 18% year over year. The Whitmore Foundation had moved their gala to a different venue and released a statement about seeking a partner better aligned with their operational standards. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I called someone I'd met at a conference 3 months earlier. His name was Patrick. He worked in hospitality investment, the kind of fund that acquires distressed properties and repositions them. I had done some consulting work for his company on an event logistics project, and he had told me, in the way that people say things at industry events and sometimes actually mean them, "If you ever see something interesting, let me know." The Fontaine, I said, is about to be very interesting. It took 14 months. I won't pretend I understood every step of the process. I was not the lead on this. I was not the money. I was not the lawyer. What I was the person who knew the building, who knew the vendors who'd been burned and would come back for the right operator, who knew which contracts had been let lapse and which relationships could be rebuilt. Patrick's fund needed someone who could walk into that property and tell them exactly what was salvageable and what had to go. I was that person. The acquisition closed on a Thursday. I signed the consulting agreement that made me the interim director of operations the following Monday. My first day back at the Fontaine, I walked in through the front entrance. Not the service door. I wore a suit that had taken me 3 months of strategic shopping to find. I had a badge with my name on it, my full name, my title, and I used it to get into the elevator. The executive floor still smelled like the same cleaning solution. Ashton was still there, His father had retained a small equity stake in the deal and had, apparently, not yet had the conversation with his son about what a management transition actually meant. Ashton was in the glass-walled conference room when I walked past. He looked up. He didn't recognize me. I let that sit for exactly 1 week. I needed the week to get oriented, honestly. There was real work to do. Vendor calls, a full audit of the operational contracts, a meeting with the remaining event staff, 4 people who had somehow held on to everything and who looked at me during our first meeting with the particular exhaustion of people who have been right for a long time and are very tired of it. I know what this place was, I told them. I know what it can be. I need 60 days. They gave me 60 days. The Whitmore Foundation Gala was scheduled for early December. I know how that sounds, but I didn't engineer it. The foundation had already been in conversations with the new ownership group. Patrick's fund had reached out proactively as part of the acquisition strategy, and bringing back the gala was specifically listed in the repositioning plan as a priority. When I came on, the conversation was already happening. I just stepped into it. I had a call with the foundation's executive director, a sharp, precise woman who asked very good questions about our staffing plan and AV vendor relationships and what we were doing differently on the catering side. I answered every question. We got the contract. I did not tell Ashton what was happening until 8 days before the event. To be precise, I didn't hide it. The gala was on the events calendar that all senior staff could access. But Ashton, as I had observed over the previous weeks, did not regularly check the events calendar. He operated on a more instinctual system that I would describe as confident improvisation. He found out on a Monday morning when he walked into the pre-event logistics meeting that I had called and saw the Whitmore Foundation name on the agenda. He sat down. He looked at me. Something shifted in his expression. Not recognition exactly, more like the beginning of a question he wasn't sure he wanted the answer to. "You're running the Whitmore Gala," he said. "We are," I said. "The team has been working on it for 6 weeks. I'd like to walk you through where we are." I walked everyone through where we were. We were in good shape. We had the AV vendor we'd used for 6 years before the cost cutting. The catering lead was a woman I had recruited from a downtown event space. 15 years of experience, 2 James Beard Award-adjacent employers on her resume, and a systems approach to dietary accommodations that I had specifically wanted after the Henderson Okafor situation. The florals were being handled by a local vendor, whose work I had personally vetted. Ashton tried to suggest, at 2 separate points in the meeting, modifications that I could see immediately were bad ideas. I heard him out completely both times. Then I explained, with specific reference to the operational data from the previous gala and the 3 conversations I'd had with the foundation's event coordinator, why we were going to do it differently. He didn't push back, not in the room. He found me afterward in the corridor near the service elevator. This was, I recognized, not accidental. "I want to be clear," he said, "that I have concerns about some of these decisions." "I'd welcome that conversation," I said. "Set something up with my assistant and we'll put it on the calendar this week." He stared at me. "Do I know you?" he said. "You look familiar." "I worked here before," I said. "Housekeeping and event floor. For about 3 years." There was a silence. "Right," he said. And then, because some people simply cannot stop themselves, "Well, hospitality operations is a bit different from event setup." "Yes," I said. "I also have a degree in business administration with a concentration in hospitality management, 14 months of experience on the investment and repositioning side of this specific acquisition, and a signed contract with the Whitmore Foundation. Is there something specific about the operations plan you'd like to discuss?" He didn't set up the calendar meeting. The night of the gala, I got there at 3 in the afternoon, not because anything was wrong, because I wanted to walk every inch of that room before a single guest arrived. I walked a stage. I checked the lighting plots with the AB team. I tasted the past appetizers at 4:30 and asked for a small adjustment on the seasoning on the mushroom crostini. I confirmed the dietary accommodation cards at every table. I stood in the back of the ballroom at 6:15 when the room was set and lit and the staff was in position, and it looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like, the Fontaine Chicago. What it had always been before. The guests arrived at 6:30. I was managing from the floor, earpiece in, tablet in hand, moving between the service corridor and the room perimeter in the way that good event management actually looks, which is very calm on the outside and very focused on the inside. Everything was running. The cocktail hour was smooth. The transition to dinner was clean. The keynote speaker's tech check had been done at 4 p.m. and double-checked at 5:30, and when she walked to the podium at 8:15, the system worked perfectly. I was near the back of the room when Ashton arrived. He was not on the operations team. He had not been invited to the event floor. What he had done, I later pieced together, was told himself that as VP of operations he had standing to be present at a major event, which, under normal circumstances, not wrong. But these were circumstances he hadn't fully mapped yet. He had brought someone with him, a friend it seemed, someone in a sport coat who was holding a drink from the bar that I was fairly certain he had not been given by a staff member. I watched them for about 90 seconds. Then I walked over. Ashton. I kept my voice pleasant and even. This is a private foundation event. I need you to step out. He blinked. I'm VP of Operations. I know your title, I said. This event has a specific staff list that was approved by the foundation. You're not on it. Your guest isn't a Fontaine employee. I need both of you to step out. You're serious. There are 280 people in this room who paid between $500 and $5,000 to be here tonight. I said, I take this room very seriously. His friend, to his credit, had already started moving toward the door. He had read the room faster than Ashton had. Ashton looked at me for a long moment. I could see him calculating, weighing something, the history, maybe. The distance between the woman with the housekeeping cart and the woman with the earpiece and the tablet and the signed contract. My father still has equity in this property, he said, quietly. Meant to land. I know, I said. His attorney and our legal team have an excellent relationship. The governance structure of the acquisition is very well documented. Would you like me to have someone from our legal team reach out to him tonight, or would you prefer to handle that conversation yourself? He left. I turned back to the room. The live auction raised $412,000 for the foundation, a 31% increase over the previous year's event, which had been held at a different venue. The executive director found me near the end of the night, shook my hand, and said, "We're coming back next year." I said I hoped they would. I did the breakdown with my team until 1 a.m. We walked out together through the service corridor, which I've never once been embarrassed to use, and I drove home to my apartment in Logan Square and sat on my couch for a while in the quiet. My sister called the next morning. I saw the Fontaine was in some hospitality trade publication, she said. Didn't you used to work there, in housekeeping? I did, I said. And now you're running it? I thought about that, about the mop, the notebook, the 4-year accumulation of things people had said in front of someone they thought was furniture. Interim director of operations, I said. We're doing great. She was quiet for a second. That's the most you thing I'd ever heard, she said. She wasn't wrong. Ashton's departure was quiet. His father, to his credit, did not make it complicated once the Q4 numbers landed and the Whitmore renewal was signed. There were no dramatic meetings, no confrontations in the executive floor hallway, just a Tuesday afternoon in January when he was no longer listed on the organizational chart, and the Tuesday afternoon after that, when the space he'd occupied became a small satellite office for the events team. I've been in this business long enough now to know that the story people want is the one where you stand across a marble lobby from the person who wronged you, and you say the devastating thing, and they understand, in that moment, exactly how badly they miscalculated. And sometimes that happens. The gala was close, but mostly what actually happens is quieter. It's a quarterly report. It's a renewed contract. It's a foundation executive director shaking your hand at 11:45 p.m. and meaning it. I still have the notebooks, not because I'm sentimental about the Fontaine specifically, but because I learned something in those 3 years of being invisible, and I don't want to forget it. The people who run institutions rarely understand them as well as the people who clean them, set them, and hold them together from the inside. The knowledge doesn't live in the corner office. It lives in the 40 minutes it takes to turn a room. It lives in the overhearing and the noting and the showing up. The Fontaine smells like old money and fresh flowers. I know exactly what that smell costs. I know which vendors supply it, what the markup is, and how to negotiate the annual contract. That's the whole story. That's all it ever was. People ask me sometimes what the turning point was. They want a moment, a single scene where everything clicked and I decided to fight back. It makes for a better story that way. The truth is messier and slower and a lot less cinematic. The turning point wasn't when Ashton told me to move my cart in the hallway. It wasn't when he shut me down in front of the events team about the stage lighting. It wasn't even the Whitmore Gala disaster. Watching something that had taken years to build get embarrassed in front of the people it was built to serve. The turning point was a Tuesday night in a community college classroom when I was 31 years old, exhausted, still in my work shoes, trying to follow a lecture on hospitality finance after a 9-hour shift. Nobody knew I was there. Nobody at the Fontaine knew I had been going there for 2 years. I hadn't told anyone because it hadn't felt real yet. Like saying it out loud would jinx it, or worse, invite someone to explain why it was unlikely. That night, I almost didn't go. I had a reason not to. I was tired. The shift had been rough. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 4 minutes deciding. I went in. I think about that a lot, the 4 minutes. Because nothing that came after, not the consulting contract, not the acquisition, not the night of the gala, when I walked Ashton out of the ballroom I used to set tables in, none of it happens if I don't go into that classroom. The big moments are visible. The small ones are where everything actually gets decided. What I've come to understand is that there's a cost to how you treat people, and it's almost never immediate. Ashton didn't pay a price the day he told me to move my cart. He didn't pay a price when he ignored the lighting problem I flagged, or when he replaced Elaine, or when he handed the AV contract to someone cheaper and less experienced. Each of those decisions felt fine to him in the moment, I'm sure. Comfortable even, because the consequences were absorbed by other people, by the vendors, by the staff, by the guests at the Whitmore Gala who paid good money for an evening that fell apart. That's how it usually works. The people who make careless decisions rarely feel the immediate weight of them. Someone else carries it, and after a while, if nothing pushes back, they start to believe there is no weight. But there's always weight. It accumulates somewhere. What I did wasn't revenge in the way people mean when they say that word with a particular gleam. I didn't plan it as revenge. I planned it as a career. I built skills because I needed them. I took notes because I'm someone who takes notes. I called Patrick because I saw an opportunity and I had something real to offer. The fact that Ashton was standing in the room when it all landed, that was geography, not scheming. Opal texted me that photo of the default notice because she thought I'd find it interesting. She was right. But she also texted me because we had built something over shared break room microwaves and quiet eye contact. Because I had treated her like a person when we were both just people doing our jobs. That text was worth 14 months of work. Relationships built on genuine decency have a return that you can't plan for and can't manufacture. I think that's the thing I'd say to anyone who's where I was, invisible, overlooked, certain they're temporary. The knowledge you're accumulating while you're being ignored is real. The relationships you build with the people around you. Opal, the 4 event staff members who held on to everything, those are real. The degree you're earning at night in shoes you've been wearing since 7 in the morning is real. None of it feels like power when you're in the middle of it. It feels like Tuesday. But Tuesday is where everything gets built.